Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined by a returning guest. It has been 10 years, 11 years now, that he has not been on the show, which is a darn shame. He's a very talented comic creator. He has a great sense of humor. He's very Far Side Gary Larson-esque in his style and his humor. His style is actually better than Gary Larson, in my opinion. But he is, of course, Ryan Hudson from ChannelATE Comics. How are you doing today, Ryan?
Doing well. How are you doing, man?
Good, good. It kind of scared me for a second because your audio wasn't going when you chuckled there. I'm like, did we cut out there? But we didn't, so that's good.
All right, good.
It's been 10 years, 11 years, whatever, since you've been on the show. During that time, you had a brief hiatus. We'll get into that later on, though. What the hell have you been doing for the past 11 years?
Well, just been doing ChannelATE and working on various other animation and comic projects along the way. So, yeah, it's when I was on your show last, my comic was like a year and a half old, and now it is, I think, working on 13 years. We just had the 12th anniversary, so.
Oh, congratulations. Your humor is very Gary Larson-esque. His more of a one-panel shot, but your 4 or 5, sometimes 6-panel strips have always been just humorous, especially the bonus panels. Those always crack me up. I actually had to go through the archive again just to see, what I had missed or just to kind of refresh my memory. And
yeah,
you got great comedic chops there for sure, man.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
How did it start? For those that don't know about ChannelATE, how did it all get started, and how have you evolved since you since you were last on the show?
Well, when I first started, I've been doing like comics since I was a kid. I had a comic strip in my junior high newspaper, and it was something I always wanted to be in the newspapers when I was an adult. And then, it was one of those things that kind of seemed unattainable when you get into high school and you see there's people who are better artists than you, and you kind of get down on yourself. Well, that's how it was for me, at least. And so I gave up on the idea, but I still went to school for art. I got a degree in computer animation and went to the video games industry. And then I think it was MySpace. Everyone, if you remember that, then you're old like me. But yeah, MySpace, you could reshare using an HTML code Cyanide and Happiness comics. And so they started popping up on everyone's pages. And the only webcomic at that point I had known about was Penny Arcade, but I didn't know it was a webcomic. Like, the concept didn't occur to me. I think I'd seen their comic in a video game magazine at some point. So when I saw it online, I just thought it was like a company putting out a comic. I didn't realize it was two guys doing it, totally, what's the term? Like indie style, And then when I saw Cyanide and Happiness, I was just like, oh my God, this is something I want to do and get into this. You know what I mean? And I had read some Perry Bible Fellowship. Basically, the comics I got into when webcomics were a thing, I didn't realize were webcomics. And it was Cyanide and Happiness that clued me into that. And I was just like, okay, this is something I could do. That no one's telling me I can't be in the newspaper to do this. You know what I mean? So it took away the bar of entry, and you can see that in my first year of strips. They're pretty crudely drawn. So that's how I got started. I was working at a game studio, and things weren't going so well there. And so I just started posting comics. And there's another thing that'll date me here. Stumble Upon was huge at the time. And my comics kind of exploded within the first couple weeks. And I think that's what made me think it's something I should keep doing, as opposed to something I was just doing for fun for a minute. You know what I mean?
You're not really dating yourself. You're a historian of webcomic knowledge.
It's funny, every day though I'll get new readers. For a long time I felt like my readership were just people my age, and I'm there still are, but I'll get readers that are like, I've been reading your comics since junior high, and it's just like, wow, I didn't realize it didn't occur to me that I'd be hearing those sentences, from people.
It's funny because I look back at your archive and the references you gave. That's literally, it was like a year after I had started TGT, and it was, and so our first show was like you said in the green room, was your Must have been one of your first interviews, roughly, because you were a year into your comic strip.
Yeah, yeah, it was.
I mean, first off, why did you want to come on the show? It's now that I can kind of ask this question because I was still starting out as well. But why did you want to come on Two Geeks Talking at the time, or TGT Webcomics at the time? I should.
Why did I want to come on it 10 years ago?
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't remember. I mean, I had listened to your show. I forget who your host was. I think it was the
No.
you had a co-host on there too, and I listened to your guys' show, and you had interviewed a few people that I followed,
Mhm.
and then I can't remember if it was on Twitter or what, but you and I got talking and followed each other, and I was really excited that you were wanting to have me on back then, so it was cool.
Yeah, it was Phil was the co-host back then.
Phil, that's
Yeah,
right.
Frump.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
Frump.
when we
That's the word I was trying to remember. Frump.
went by handles back then, not by real names.
Right.
Because that
right.
was the in thing to do was handles.
Yeah.
God. With technology the way it's advanced, what's truly been the biggest change, and what's been the worst change for art in your opinion?
Well, the best changes have been literally my tools, and the worst changes have been ad technology. So, yeah, as far as my tools go, when I first started, I was on just a Wacom tablet that you're not looking at the screen while you're drawing. And so what's different now is I have, I'm drawing on a Cintiq, which feels more natural, obviously, and they even have Wacom has a computer that is just a screen. It's not a tablet. It's a full-on i7, powerful computer that's just a screen. And I mean, I used to, if I had a deadline, I used to lug my tower and go on road trips with my tower and my monitor to finish deadlines. And now I just take a computer this big, and I can take it into the living room if I want to watch TV with people and still draw a comic. So that's been the best advancement, has been just that technology has gotten a lot easier to comics. And then the worst thing that's changed, I don't know if it's necessarily the worst thing that's changed. Maybe it's just been the hardest to adapt to. My readership was a lot smaller 10 years ago, and I made a lot of money. I made a good living from a small readership, and now I have a lot more people who follow me, and the ad money is almost nil. I mean, it's there, but it's really crazy, the balance shift. And so finding other ways to monetize my comic has been interesting. I've had to I haven't been able to live off of my comic for a long time now, and I'm not feeling sorry for myself about it. It's just the reality. So I've been doing a lot of freelance. And the positive thing about my comic is it's actually been what's gotten me jobs. I mean, I haven't shown a portfolio in years. I've worked for people who know about the comic, or um, meet through friends of friends working on comics, and so that's been one of the big positives about the whole income situation. But yeah, the ad tech has just been horrendous.
You're not the only one that said that. Actually, Gordon McAlpine from Multiplex there said the exact same thing. It was just like how the revenue is just dried up pretty much.
I gotta do a shout out right now to my Patreon followers, because they've really been a huge help in keeping me going. And I've got 103 Patreon supporters, and it's been a lot of fun to give them extra content through the portal there, and then have them support me because they like my comic. And some people have been supporting my comic for years, and it's like huge shout out to them. They've helped curb that adpocalypse, or whatever you want to call it.
Speaking of the Patrons, though, I mean, has Patreon been that worthwhile? I mean, is it something that everyone should be getting into, or is it because of the restrictions that they put on certain type of content on their site that it's more difficult to get into and utilize?
I'm honestly not sure. I haven't had any restrictions on my content. I didn't know that was a thing. But yeah, I think if you've got a little following of people, and even if you just give it a try, if it's something that seems like an option for you, I think it's beneficial to anyone. I mean, if it doesn't work out, there's nothing you're obligated to do. You can just close down your page, which I did in the time that I was not doing my comic. So it's been good for me. I want to expand it. I've seen people doing really well on there. And I'm just trying to think of new ways all the time that I can offer something better to get people in the door. Because I've seen people make a full-time wage from their Patreon, and that's not where I'm at right now, but I'm really like grateful for what I've got so far. So it's been really cool. I didn't do it very well in the past, and I feel like I've hit a good stride this year with being able to add content that doesn't bog down my ability to create the content on the main page. Because in the past, I've offered things where, you know, if you have 100 people on Patreon, not everybody's reading the stuff you post. There's a lot of people who just want to support you because they love your art and they want you to keep doing it. And so I'll, spend a half a day editing a video I've made, and it might get seen by 10 of my supporters. And um, I just have to make sure that I know what I'm getting into with each thing that I want to offer, because I have to just be okay with the fact that a half a day's of work might only be seen by a handful of people, but the archive will be there for when new people show up, or if I ever want to offer it somewhere else. But I think I went on a tangent. I forgot exactly what I was answering there. But
But you did mention that you shut down your Patreon because you took a bit of hiatus, and this is something I wanted to get into.
yeah.
Doing a comic for as long as you've been doing it, obviously the burnout factor happens, etc. But
Mhm.
why did you shut down ChannelATE for that year and a bit?
So I was getting to the point where I felt like I was really busting it trying to get as much content as I could created, and kind of talking about the technology being the hardest part to adapt to, like the ad technology and like making money. I didn't I will admit, like, I did not adapt very well to a lot of changes. I was a little reluctant to get onto new social media things because I just kept doing what worked for me before, and when that stopped working, I don't know what I was thinking, but I didn't try new things, and I just felt like, well, everything's dwindling. I'm not getting the same enjoyment I was getting before, um, and so I just decided to put it to rest. Some freelance had dried up. Yeah, I don't know. I'll admit I was in kind of a depressed phase there, and so I stopped doing the comic. Um, and I decided I've music is my second love, my big passion, and so in that time, I invested some money and got a professional recording setup for my bedroom studio essentially, and I wanted to start getting into audio production and or mixing. And right around that time, I got a job offer from a company called Octopi, paying me to do comics and animation, basically just like ChannelATE with a new style, and they were paying me more than I never made in a year. And so I in my brand new newly built recording setup, I put that idea on the back burner and started doing comics again. I just wasn't doing ChannelATE. So for the last year and a half, I was doing Octopi's animation and comics, and then things changed there, and I had missed ChannelATE, so I started it up again and decided to just go all in on whatever was new. So I've been active on various things like Tapas and Instagram stuff that I thought, if I was going to make my money from ads, I was insistent on posting my comics on my site and linking people to them from Facebook. I wasn't really embracing those other social media stuff.
Mm.
So that's what I'm doing this time around, and it's been working. I should have done it years ago, honestly. I think if I have any advice for someone doing this long term who gets burned out, but your product's still good, just adapt. Try to figure out how to keep changing and doing what's popular as far as social media goes. I haven't changed really my humor to adapt to things, aside from maybe just my jokes evolve because I've evolved as a person. But I would say the technology part is what I would recommend adapting to.
I find that you get a lot more traffic with Instagram these days and Twitter than you do obviously with Facebook
Yeah.
and whatever other sites there are out there for it. But because it's more direct audience, and that's the main thing. If you're stuck behind a gate or behind a wall of some time of something, and you have your 1,000+ followers or 3,000 or 4, a
Hmm.
certain percentage is only going to see it. So the fact that you have an Instagram where you can throw up a quick story and you could probably get more views in that regard than you would with a single post
Yeah.
is just kind of great to see as well. And it's just quick, easy, and the short attention span, especially at this generation,
Yeah.
is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's technology. You gotta love it, and like you said, you gotta adapt to it.
Yeah, yeah. Embrace that change.
So talk about the comic itself, though. You've never had a long form comic per se. You've always
Right.
had set characters, kind of use every so often type deal, but they're always different. I mean, different hairstyle, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, would you ever think about doing a kind of like a long form ChannelATE?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. I have a comic project, well, not a comic. I have a cartoon project that I haven't launched that I'm working on like pre-production on.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like every time I come up with regular characters and stories, I start imagining them as animations and not necessarily as comics. I don't know why. I feel like probably just it's hard enough to devote as much time as possible to Channel 8 that splitting that time with another comic might seem daunting, but if it's another medium, it feels different. So I have a little cast of characters and some scripts that I've been working on for a show that really could work as a long form comic. I think it's the same kind of humor as Channel 8, but it's in story form
Mm-hmm.
and recurring characters. Um, and yeah, I've always wanted to get into stories. It's been kind of funny. It's one of those things I'm trying to practice more is writing stories because I feel like my strongest skill is joke writing, and I fall into the trap of just doing what I'm good at. And making stories to put those jokes into is definitely something I want to get into more. It would be cool to do a long form Channel 8 styled strip. Um, I don't know if they would be one offs, or ongoing,
Yeah.
but I definitely am trying to get into animation with some characters in the same kind of humor style, but different art style and stuff.
When it comes to the future of this comic, I mean,
Mhm.
if you decide to go animation or if you decide to go long form or whatever you decide to do, I mean, we'll all be there either way. What about cross collaboration with fellow comic creators? Anything along that line, possibly? I mean, I Cyanide and Happiness would be an interesting cross.
Well, I actually worked for oh yeah, that's something that I forgot to mention when you asked what I've been doing for the last 10 years, but, I actually worked for Cyanide and Happiness from 2013 to 2017, I
Oh
think.
wow.
Yeah, they started their, animated series in 2013, I think. I could
Mm-hmm.
have these years off. Um, and they had linked to my comic in 2011, which kinda opened up because I don't know, their old site used to feature fellow comics
Yeah.
on their homepage to recommend other people. And when they featured my comic, I messaged them and got chatting, and that kind of opened the lines of communication there. And so when they did their Kickstarter to start their animated series, I just messaged them and was like, "Hey, I do animation.
Mhm.
If I could apply for a job, that'd be cool." And they ended up hiring me to write some shorts, and so there's a few Cyanide and Happiness shorts that I wrote and that I've done storyboards for. I actually didn't do a whole lot of animation for them. It was more like directorial type stuff.
Oh wow.
Not as a director, but storyboards are very directorial. You
Yeah.
kind of plan the shots and you're adapting the voiceover track into a visual to give to animators, and that was a really fun job. And it was really grateful to them for that opportunity. I learned a lot about animation production working for them, and a lot about collaboration because they're a whole yeah, it's a
Well,
lot bigger since then.
you'd expect it. I mean,
Oh yeah.
between the board games and their animation, because their shorts are just hilarious. I
Oh
love
yeah,
them.
and I can't believe I mean, it's awesome that they've been able to do it consistently. One a week, they've got an animation up there along with their daily comic.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
it's crazy. It's amazing. And then you look at Penny Arcade and PvP just did a relaunch with their stuff as well too. And
Oh wow, I wasn't aware of that.
oh yeah, Scott Kurtz decided to completely retcon his entire 20 years, 22 years in doing the comic, and he's fast forwarded like a decade or so.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. He's really introduced a lot of new characters, and it looks like he's finally having fun with it again.
Well,
So
that's cool. I'll have to check it out.
yeah, for sure. Um, with the comic, with yourself, and with the love of music, actually, that's interesting that you brought up music there. are we going to see a ChannelATE music video, like 80s montage or anything?
80s montage, yeah, definitely. I've got music in the works on that cartoon that I mentioned. The main characters in the cartoon are actually in like a what do you call it? That it's not a comic, or it's not a cartoon about musicians like Scott Pilgrim style or
Right.
anything, but the characters are in like a small band that they do open mics with. So there's going to be original music that I put together and have various friends guest on who do music themselves. And so I'm really excited about it because music's something I've wanted to add um to my comic in general. I did a couple of music videos years ago, and I was pretty new to music production. I listen to them still. They're on the ChannelATE YouTube, and they're very primitive compared to like what we're putting together now. I've gone through a lot of online schooling for mixing and mastering music, and we've written some cool stuff for this cartoon. So I'm really stoked about it. I think it would be fun to just do some one-off songs that I animate with ChannelATE characters too.
Yeah.
But so far, I haven't released much in that avenue, but I'm getting stoked about it.
Can I ask the name of the comic or the cartoon rather?
Yeah. So if anyone watching is a longtime fan of ChannelATE, I did a cartoon 10 years ago in 2009 called Greg is a Garden Gnome. And it's not going to be anything like that original one, but it's based on Greg, and I've added a different world, new characters. So yeah, it's called Greg is a Garden Gnome, and I'm going to start posting a lot of behind the scenes pre-production stuff on my Patreon. So before it's released, you'll be able to peer into that a little bit on my Patreon. So yeah, when I was talking about how it's been hard to break from doing ChannelATE, Greg is another thing I haven't been able to leave. I know he's a 10-year-old idea, but he's been in my head the whole time. So
He's great. I love him. As soon as you mentioned the name, I'm like, oh my god, yes, I remember that. It's hilarious. I loved it.
Cool. I'm glad. Well, hopefully this one excels beyond the first one.
I can't wait. Yeah, it's just, sometimes you get those ideas and you stick with it, even though, I don't think anyone has said anything bad about Greg Gardner. If they did, they're idiot.
Like, the funny thing is about, I don't know if you've experienced this with any of your projects that maybe you've had to shelf, but like with Greg, I almost feel like I can't do the next thing until I give him one more chance. Like I've always felt guilty I didn't give that show idea a proper go. I don't know if that's just a OCD of a creative or something, but I feel like if I didn't, I've always loved the idea and I didn't carry through the first time, and I always thought if I moved on from it, I would regret it. So it's just one of those things where I'm trying to do it justice before I move on to something else.
Yeah, shelving ideas are kind of difficult, especially if you put a lot of time into it. And I think in your case, though, if you look at the experience you've gained since our last interview, I don't think you probably could have done it the justice that you can now.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
You gain, I think if you don't gain experience in what you love and what you're passionate about, then are you really getting the most out of it?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Everyone is inspired to be creative or they're naturally creative.
Right.
But when do the two either oppose each other or when do they help you in your process?
That is actually one big difference that I've learned since my early days of doing the strip. I used to write my comic by staring at the wall, essentially, just sitting there thinking really hard, trying to be funny. And the reason I kept doing that was because it worked sometimes, and I didn't know there were other methods. I've learned since then, and I have a pretty tried and true method for coaxing the inspiration to come. Because yeah, you always, if I understand you correctly, the desire to be creative is always there, but when inspiration's not striking, the ability to be creative gets a little stifled. Um, I've learned to work through the lack of inspiration until it happens. And I still struggle with it when I'm just not in the mood to even try. But I mean, we all go through that at our day jobs, so it's not like that's a unique problem. But what I do is I fill a page now. Well, now it's a Flash document full of squares, And in the beginning, I would just draw squares on paper, and sometimes I do that just to shake up my brain. But what I do is I try to, with stick figures, rush through 3-panel jokes, even if they're horrible, and that because the point is to go through the motions of making jokes, because that kind of starts to connect those tingly things in your brain that make you feel familiar with humor. And it's funny to realize, doing this comic for 12 years, you still need to remind yourself how to be funny when you're not in the mood to be funny. So that's what I do as an exercise. I call the comics warm-ups or roughs, but I basically just start writing crappy jokes to get the flow going. And a lot of times those crappy jokes end up being rewritten as I'm doing it to come up with the comic. So the reason I can come up with a lot of comics is because of this forced inspiration thing. And then, there are the good days where you're just inspired and you feel the jokes coming out of you and you're not sure where they're coming from because you didn't, you know, I could set up the scene the same, light the same candle, pour the same cup of coffee with the right ratio of cream, put on the same music that inspired me last time, and have nothing feel inspirational. And then another day, it's just like Inspiration City. So to get through that, I've just been doing the exercise, and it's something that Stephen King's touched on before. He says that you just have to write. And I used to think when he would say just write, I was like, well, what if you don't know what to write? But that's like not his point. His point is just start. Like, I'm sure there are just pages and pages of garbage that he threw away of just him writing about his stories. I'm not trying to speak for him, but I'm just imagining if he uses his own advice the way I use his advice, he's got a lot of mileage out of just doing the exercise of creating.
No, for sure. And it's hard, especially if you hit that wall where it's just like, I know I have something. I know I need to put something out. Pushing through that creative or lack of creativity, or lack of that barrier,
Yeah.
writer's block,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, is hard. I mean, I've been in the same boat, and I'm still struggle with it on a day in and day out basis. Where I know I want to write something, I know I have to write something, um, to get a pilot I'm creating out type deal, and it's like
Mm.
I got I got nothing. I mean, I have the overall concept, I have the idea, but to say, well, I want this character to do this and this to this, so that it's not working for me.
Right.
I feel like they're mocking me during those characters.
Yeah. Taunting you with their presence,
Oh,
with their lack of good words.
be active, be active. No, we're just gonna be over here having coffee while you think of something.
Yeah.
Moving on. That being said, everyone has kind of that one person that inspires them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
Um. Well, I feel like there's a number of people that have inspired me over the years, but I've always kind of idolized Trey Parker.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think what South Park is what I've always wanted to do. I've never been really attracted to the idea of working for other people on their projects, even though I've done a lot of that and it's been fun. I love that. I mean, obviously Matt Stone is part of that, but Trey
Right.
Parker, I feel like, is kind of the director brain guy, and I love that South Park is hilarious. They do most of the voices themselves. They've kept everything in house to where they don't have a lot of people telling them what to do. Um, and so, yeah, even though ChannelATE's very different in a lot of ways and is a comic and not a cartoon, I've I don't know, I've really idolized Trey Parker, and also Dave Willis from
Yeah.
Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Dave Willis and Matt Malero are another pair that had created their own show, and he does the voice of Meatwad and Carl on the show, if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
And I just love that. It's almost like when DIY gets really successful. You know what I mean? I think that's what I like. The idea of creating a cartoon in my home studio and having it be successful enough to call all the shots on jokes and and who I hire to like voice act. I don't know. It's a very romantic idea to me, as opposed to working through the studio system and animating for other people and stuff. So yeah, those are my heroes, are kind of the people who have done it themselves in cartoons.
From a professional standpoint, you've been doing this for a long time. You're successful with ChannelATE. You've worked with other successful people, of course, with Cyanide and Happiness. And, you've done an incredible job with that, and you still continue to do an incredible job with that. Do you consider yourself personally successful?
Yeah, that's a question I have thought about before, because it's hard to not quantify success as financial success. Um, every time I get an email from someone telling me how, they were in the hospital with cancer and that my comic got them through it, or uh I mean, that's just one example of, like, I've had a lot of people tell me what my comics mean to them, or other creators. There's some people doing a lot better than I am in comics right now, who have told me over the years that, they're younger than I am, and they maybe discovered my comic and it inspired them, or something about my comic helped them get better at their own, and that actually really makes me feel good. I've it's That makes me feel personally successful. I have a hard time, if I'm being honest. I have a hard time feeling successful when I've had such a hard time making a living from something I feel like I'm good at. Uh, but that's stuff you go to therapy for. You know what I mean? So, because I've obviously I I appreciate all of the freelance I've gotten because of my comic and what my comic does for me. But for some reason, I've always kind of felt like I have periods where I feel like a failure, which led to me ending my comic. So to answer your question, if I feel personally successful, um, sometimes, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, and I think that might just have to do with the mindset.
Better than just going the financial route. A lot of people do that.
Yeah,
Not many go too deep into their own personalities.
yeah, it's changing. The answer is changing every day.
It,
Ask me tomorrow, I might have a different one.
well, then the reverse of that, obviously, you mentioned failures in your own creativity. Then, how do you deal with those personal failures?
Um, that's a good question, because yeah, um, it's really the way I deal with them are resetting my goals, because some personal failures are things you can't undo. Like if you made a goal for yourself to hit X by 30 and you didn't, you have to readjust, or else you're just permanently a failure. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's mindset again is a big one for how I've had to deal with things that I felt like were personal failures. I've just had to reset where I'm at and be like, things that didn't happen didn't happen, things that did, and that's the reality of today, and I got to move forward with that. And some days I'm really jazzed about that, and then there's still days where you have a down day, and that stuff creeps in. I think one thing I try, I don't like that depression and anxiety are taboo, and I do deal with. I'm medicated for some serious anxiety, and when I have bad days with that, it definitely can take over. It can take the reins and tell me I'm a failure. And then on days when I've got a good handle on it, I don't remember why I would feel so bad, because things aren't as bad as they could be. You know what I mean? I mean, it's good to be alive. It's good to be creating. So that's, yeah, it's just mental work is the way I deal with perceived failures, because they're not always actual failures.
I went through the same thing. Like I took about almost a year and a half, or 2 years off of the show, roughly.
Mm,
My mindset was literally just the place I was in, the work I was at, was just not doing it for me. I was mentally drained. I was mentally berated and a bunch of other stuff, and it was not a good place to be in. And so I felt I was not giving my all when I would do interviews and all that stuff. I don't know if
mm,
that came across or if it didn't, or did. I apologize to those who I interviewed, but some cases it was just I I'm I'm just not on my game, and
yeah.
it's tough to work through either way.
Yeah. And the self-care in all those situations is really valuable. Those breaks that we can take from our projects sometimes they might be sad to make the decision. It might be sad to make the decision to take a break, but it's usually good in the long term.
I mean, it has to be. I mean, we can only do so much, and we can
Yeah.
only let so much build up in ourselves. And in order for us to deal with it, then we have to work through it and talk with people and have a good community of friends around you. And that's the only thing we can truly accomplish.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's good to be alive.
Yeah.
The younger generation are looking to you as an inspirational person because of what you've done, and they're becoming inspired themselves. As you said, you've had people come up to you and through emails, etc., saying that your work has affected their lives, and that's great to see. How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
Well, I think that the first and foremost is just doing the best, believing in the work you're putting out. Obviously, if you're genuine, that comes across, and I think that's what inspires people is being genuine, and also I think being approachable. I've reached out when I first started in webcomics. I reached out to some more successful people to say, "Hey, I've been reading your work, and it's been inspiring. Thank you." And just reaching out to people, and I'm not begrudging anybody, or what's the word? I'm not faulting anyone for having boundaries for themselves personally, but I was surprised the people that were really unapproachable. And so I've tried to just be approachable when younger cartoonists or just people who are starting out want to chat. And I think that's good to do. I don't think there needs to be any. I mean, it's good to have personal boundaries. If you've got something that makes you feel bad, don't do it. But I feel like being approachable when people want to talk to you about things is a valuable thing, and I think that's how you can inspire the people that come after you, is to within your means, help them out if they ask for help. And yeah, I guess that's my answer there. And then just in general, to be inspirational, just do your most genuine work. Put yourself the way you want to be perceived in a positive light, I would say.
And keep doing what you're doing. Enjoy what you're doing. That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
If you don't, take a break.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and just I have to put a disclaimer there. I know that I'm sure there are emails people have emailed me and I've accidentally let go. You know what I mean? So I need to practice what I preach, and I try to be approachable. But I know I can think of a couple times where I've looked at my starred emails in Gmail and realized I meant to get back to someone, and it's a year later. That's always awkward to be like, sorry about the delay. I really appreciated your email. I hope you're still doing that comic you wanted feedback on.
Anyhow, more positive outlook here then would be where can we find you, of course, on all the social media and all of that presence so that we can enjoy your work as I do?
So you can find my entire archive on ChannelATE.com, and that's ATE for ChannelATE. There's a pretty active community of people following me on Instagram. That seems to be the funnest place that people are following me. I still post the bonus panels there too, so that seems to be what people are hoping to see, because I've gone where I don't put. Anyway, not going to get off on that. So that's Ryan K. Hudson is my name on Instagram, because initially it was just going to be my
ChannelATE.
kind of my art thing, but it's pretty much right now just ChannelATE stuff, and I've been recording 30-second songs based on people's one-word suggestions every once in a while, so I play my guitar on there a little bit. And then Facebook, it's facebook.com/ChannelATE. I'm pretty sure. If I'm wrong, you could probably Google Facebook channel. I'll look right now. I'll do the legwork myself. Okay, yeah, facebook.com/ChannelATE. And you can read my comics there with a link to the bonus panels. I don't post the bonus panels on Facebook. And then if you're a fan of Tapas, reading comics on Tapas, I'm on there as well. And I don't really know how their link system works, so search me on there if that's something you're already involved in. But yeah, those are the main things I'm on. And then Twitter, it's Ryan K. Hudson there as well. Yeah.
Well, I do hate to say it, this, Ryan, but it's the end of the interview. It's a shame, truly, because you're a great guy. I love talking with you. I love your perspective and your artwork, your humor as well too. And so I wanted you to keep doing what you're doing. And we gotta stop doing this every 10 years, though.
Oh yeah, let's do it again soon. I really appreciate you having me on. It's great.
I get dibs on when that cartoon comes in. So
okay, absolutely.
Even when you're about to release it, I want first crack at it.
Okay, absolutely.
Good stuff. As always, you can find this interview and many, many, many thousands more, quite literally, on tgtmedia.com. It's 12 years of interviews, 12 years, thousands of interviews. August 8th, 2008 was when we started. August 8th will be our 12th anniversary this year. I don't know what we're doing because I'm the only one doing this. So it is what it is. Anyhow, youtube.com/TGT Media is where we can find all of these interviews. You can also find me on the social media at Kurt Sasso for Twitter, for Instagram, Facebook as well too, I believe, but who knows. Either way, Twitter and Instagram is what I'm mainly posting interviews on. Next week is my birthday. I will not be doing an interview, so I have to enjoy life as it is myself. We'll have someone on the following week. I don't know who it is, because whoever they're going to be a wonderful, creative, talented person in the entertainment industry of some kind. And I hope you like, subscribe, and follow this channel. Comment on this interview and post suggestions on other people who you would like to see interviewed on Two Geeks Talking. Again, Ryan, thanks for coming on the show. I do really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and everything like that.
Thanks, man. Happy birthday next week.
Thank you. All right, that's it.